Hey guys, the Skull Seeker here. Today we are going to be taking a look at a variety of different fish skulls. So the cool thing is that fish skulls are the most variable out of all of the different species of animals. They vary more than mammal skulls and amphibian skulls and reptile skulls and all of that. Between all of these fish, there are so many differences and similarities. But like within fish as a whole, they vary more than any other group of organism in terms of their skull structure. Like they all look so different. Like we have all of these here, and every single one of them is very unique and interesting looking. So first of all, we have here a Florida gar. Here we have a large head hairtail. Here we have a flathead catfish. Here we have a conger eel, common carp, African sharp-toothed catfish, monkfish, pike perch, long-nosed gar, barracuda. And that is all of these guys here. So anyway, it's a lot of skulls here. We got 10, and we are going to go and talk about each of these now. So first, I'll talk about the gar skulls. So here we have the Florida gar. So this is a species that has a very wide head, as you can see with the long-nosed gar. I'll bring that over here. The long-nosed gar has a much longer and thinner snout. The Florida gar has a much wider and shorter one. There are several species of gar in North America, and the Florida gar has a head shape very similar to the spotted gar and the short-nosed gar, but it still varies a little bit from those. And then the long-nosed gar is pretty much unique in terms of its snout there. The alligator gar has a head that's even wider than the Florida gar. However, they still both look very similar to each other within those two. So the Florida gar, here you can see the eye hole. So these bones here are the jugal that makes up this right here. And that is actually the same structure that is found in mammals. And a lot of these bones are the same and have the same names as the bones for mammals, because at one point mammals were fish in terms of the evolutionary timeline. So this is the operculum, which is a bone that guards the gill arches. So behind this would be where the gills would be. Now they aren't here in this individual because we just have the skull here and it's missing some of the bones there. But yeah, this is where the gills would be, behind this bone right here. And then we have a whole armored skull. So the thing with gar is that their whole head is bone, and in fact their whole body is bone, like their whole outer body. The only part of them that isn't bone is the underside of the jaw here and the fins. However, the fins are still bone themselves. They just have a layer of skin covering them. But other than that, gar's whole bodies are just solid bone. They're very powerful creatures. So now the thing you guys probably want to see most is the teeth. So if I tilt this down to get it open, here we have, let me just move that up. Here we have the teeth of the Florida gar. Now you can see in here that there are multiple rows. We have these big ones showing here. Then we have a little, like all these super tiny ones on the outside. These are actually farther to the outside than the big ones. And then behind the big ones, farther in the jaw, we have some more tiny ones, and even more tiny ones even in there. Like there are several rows here. This is like easily 300 or more teeth, probably 500 or more. Just tons and tons of little teeth on here. But then the big ones, there's way less of those. But those are for grabbing their prey, which is usually fish. So, and fish are slippery, so these big teeth here snatch it and make sure it can't escape, and then it can tear things with these little ones, because they're like little serrations basically. And then they swallow their food whole because they aren't able to chew, just like all other fish. And there's a whole lot of very interesting bones in the gar that vary from other fish. We have this long thing right here that goes down the whole length of the snout. Very interesting. And then the vertebrae attach on there. Then the neurocranium is where the brain is. And for the gar, it's in this area here. It's hard to see because the skull has like this basically armor covering it. But if you just find the neurocranium itself, it's easier to see that stuff because it would be missing all of this armor here. Then in the front we have the nostrils are these two holes here, and then it has sensory organs like sharks and crocodiles and even Spinosaurus. It has these little sensory holes here along the snout, and that detects the electrical currents of fish in the water, and they're able to detect their prey that way. So even in murky water, they know where their prey is, and then they can snatch it when it approaches. So that's a really cool thing there. Then for the long-nosed gar, it is a very similar structure. However, it is just a much more elongated skull. So these would be kind of similarly lengthed creatures if you take away the extra part of the snout. Like you just, like from here to here, the rest of the body would be about the same size. Long-nosed gar would still be a little bit longer body, but then has the longer snout, making it bigger in the first place. But anyway, and then difference with this one, we have all of these teeth. There are less rows of them. There's still a lot, but the mouth isn't as wide, so it can't support as many teeth. And then this one's missing a little bit of the tip of the snout. It doesn't have the full rostrum because it would be a little bit wider in the front. But anyway, once again, we have the eye holes, and then that bone on the inside with the neurocranium. And then this one actually has these pieces here. These two are part of the gill arches, and of course the teeth get stuck in there. Part of the gill arches right here, this bone, which is very interesting. But these two are very similar skulls, and they're very closely related, so they're just similar species overall. Next, we'll take a look at a pike perch, also called a Zander. So this species is related to perch and walleye and bass and sunfish and stuff like that. However, these are much more toothy than bass, but about the same toothiness as walleye. It's a very similar fish to a walleye. The fins look the same, body shape. They're just overall a very similar fish. Once again, here we have the operculum, which just protects the gills. And then, of course, there's no gills on the inside here. But sometimes people will preserve this when they sell the skulls. But anyway, here we have some big teeth, once again in multiple rows. Now, with fish like this in the perch family, this right here is the maxilla, and then this one with the teeth is the premaxilla. Depending on the species, some of them, such as bowfin, which is a different family, but bowfin will have the teeth on the maxilla and on the premaxilla. This one just has them on the premaxilla, and then it has some on the inside and the roof of the mouth. You can see those on here, almost like a whole second set of jaws, and that is the pterygoid teeth, which is very interesting. Once again, we have the neurocranium here. That's where the brain is, through that hole. And then we have the dentary, is what the bottom jaw is called. Here we have the jugal right here, curving across to form the eye hole. And it's missing on the other side. But anyway, very cool skull. Here we have the nostrils up here. You can see that. Here's the front. Kind of looks like a snake head a little bit. But anyway, this one's part of the perch family. The other two were gar. Now, next we will look at a carp. Oh, and I should mention that pike perches are found in Europe and North America. The gars are just North America. This one is a common carp, and it is painted over because it was a very nasty skull. And then the back is silver. This one does have the gill arches, so you can see the gills in there. So these are how the fish breathes, and this one does indeed have the gill arches. So you can take a look at that. That's how that looks when the gills are in there. Kind of feathery substances there. And then once again, the operculum right here protects the gill arches. You can see how that works now, how it just covers up them on the outside. And then we have the nostrils in the front, the eye holes once again with the jugal, and then the mouth has these little lips here. So this one is the maxilla, and then the premaxilla is the one with the teeth, which they have really, really small teeth. Dentary is the bottom jaw. You can see the underside of the gill arches there, the part that covers them up anyway, and then the gill arches themselves are in there. So it's a very cool skull also. I mean, all of these are pretty cool, and they, like I said, they all vary a whole lot, but it gets you an idea of just how diverse fish really are. Then next we will take a look at another North American species. So this one is a catfish, and we have the dorsal fin spine and then the pectoral fin spines. So these catfish are actually the largest group of venomous vertebrates, which means there's more venomous catfish than there are venomous snakes and venomous lizards and stuff like that. And so catfish are pretty awesome. They're my favorite fish. But anyway, yeah, these spines, when they stab you with them, you can see they're a little bit serrated there. But you can certainly, like, it's very painful. Even if they don't have venom, they have like a kind of protein that goes into you when they stab you, and it causes it to hurt really bad and bleed, and they have anticoagulant, so you're just bleeding a lot. People have been killed by getting stabbed. Even tiny little bullheads have killed people. Some guy was playing catch with a catfish and caught it, and it stabbed him in the heart, and he died. So don't play catch with animals. I don't know why you would even want to, but anyway, guy died that way. Here we have the eye holes on this catfish, and then this is a whole eye plate. So this basically just covers up the area, protects the part of the skull where the eye is. So the eye is here. This is all like armor basically. Then here's the neurocranium for a catfish. The brain actually goes in here, which is very interesting. And this one does not have any teeth because they fell out, but the teeth go on the bottom jaw there. And then it's also missing the piece on the top jaw where they would go, but they would go up under this area here. And then here we have the first vertebrae of the catfish, which is much larger than all the others. And this one's called the complex vertebrae. It's a very large vertebrae. Like, I have a blue catfish skull where the first vertebrae is larger than a cow's vertebrae, because that's how big the fish is. It's a 5-foot fish, and just absolutely huge vertebrae there. But catfish are really cool. Even within the catfish family, things vary quite a bit, as you will see with this one, the African sharp-toothed catfish. So this one's a North American species, and then this one is an African species. This is a type of walking catfish. And let me move some things around so I have more room for this. This is a walking catfish, brain once again through here. Now, this one is much more heavily armored. The whole top of the skull is armored. There's no, like, really pieces for gaps and stuff. You look at the side here, and we have the eye hole here in the very front of the skull, which is very weird because it's a huge skull. The eye's all the way forward. And then the jugal here. This is, once again, like I say with mammals, jugal and squamosal forms the zygomatic arch here on this individual. Then we have the dentary, which is the bottom jaw. This one has all of these teeth here. It's missing some on the right side of it, on the fish's right side. But anyway, it has all these teeth. They're very sharp, and there's so many of them. It has whole tooth pads, and then the ones on the roof of the mouth. It actually has in here the pterygoid teeth, which are a bunch of little ones just right in here on the roof of the mouth, this is a whole tooth pad covered in them. And that is just tons and tons of teeth used for crushing their prey once they get it in their mouth. They are very interesting fish. They actually are indirectly responsible for the deaths of many people, because when these guys are feeding, they attract in Goliath tigerfish among smaller species of tigerfish, and they have been known to kill people that fall overboard in boats, and it's all because the African sharp-toothed catfish attract the tigerfish in the first place. This one, once again, complex vertebrae, so this one is interesting. You can see here, this one is very different. It's smaller and not as I don't know, fused together as the North American species. But then we have the whole underside of the neurocranium there. And then we have, this is the pelvic girdle. So this is actually the fish's pelvis, which is like in the head. So I think that's very kind of hilarious how that works. But it's very cool anyway. The nostrils in the front of the skull here. And like I say, we have all this armor on this individual. Very cool fish. These guys, this individual has a 10-inch skull from here to here, and this one would belong to an individual about 4.5 feet long. They're very elongated and narrow fish. They get up to 6 feet, so this is a very large individual. Certainly bigger than a lot of, like, I've never seen a African sharp-toothed catfish skull for sale this size, so this is a really cool one. But yeah, eyes all the way in the forward, all the way in the front of the skull, all the way forward, so very interesting. Once again, with these catfish, they're also called crucible fish or Jesus Christ fish due to what looks like a cross on the underside of their skull. And some of them have one that resembles it more than others, but almost all of them have this like very cross-looking thing on the underside of their skulls. So they end up being called crucible fish. Pretty interesting. And then next up, we have a big one. So this is a great barracuda. So these guys get 6 to 8 feet long maximum. They're absolutely massive. And we'll take a look at this now. So in the front, you can see all these large teeth. So very toothy creatures here. They will chomp you. They will bite. You know, it's just, it will hurt. They've been known to kill people. Very gruesome animals. Very powerful creatures too. They get absolutely massive. This is a 10-inch skull here. And once again, you can see here the maxilla here, and the pre-maxilla has all these teeth. And then the dentary has some big ones. Then there's the two in front that almost touch in some individuals, so it makes it look like it's only one tooth right in the middle, which is very interesting about barracudas, is that, yeah, in images they always look like they only have one tooth on the bottom middle, but it is in fact two teeth. They're just like so close together in some of them that it makes it look like one. Anyway, this one does not have the sclerotic rings, which is also called the eye rings. That's the ring that is in the eye hole, and that basically goes inside the eye, and it's like just a bone support for the eye. But this specimen does not have the eye ring, but that goes in here. And this is the eye hole, but like I say, the eye ring would be in here, and then the nostrils are on top. And then we have these little fringes here, which go on the top of the skull there. They're just added muscle support. We have the vertebral column here. On the underside, we have the pieces that form the tongue. So you can see that in here, this bony tongue. that is formed in there. So that's very cool how it actually has a tongue made of bone. Then we have the operculum here, and the gill arches go in there. And then we have this piece right here, which is like added support for the bottom jaw. Once again, it has these fringes here. And this one is missing a lot of pieces. It would have the maxilla extending farther down here. However, it is broken on both sides here. And like I say, it's missing the eye rings, and it's missing several other pieces of the jaw. But overall, still mostly complete. Very large specimen and very cool. So very glad to be able to own a Barracuda skull. I only got it for $60, so that's actually very cheap. And they live in several oceans around the world. You can find them in North America off the coast, as well as other places. We'll move on to this one. This one looks a lot like a Barracuda, but this is a large head hairtail. These guys get pretty massive as well. Not quite as big as the great Barracuda and not quite as heavy, but they're still very large fish. This one is a little over 6 inches long for the skull. Very toothy. These teeth are actually longer than the Barracuda's teeth, which is very interesting. And this skull isn't in perfect condition. It's from the side, it looks fine, very narrow, but the jaws aren't lined up properly and they're broken. But it's a very good and nice skull still, even though it is damaged. Operculum in the back there, protecting the gill arches. You can see the vertebrae, the neurocranium on top, which is where the brain would be. Eye holes right here, nostrils on top. And yeah, just very toothy individual. They don't have anywhere near as many teeth as Barracuda, though, because as you'll notice, they don't have the small ones. The Barracuda has small ones on the premaxilla there and the maxilla. They got small ones. But yeah, then the large head hairtail does not. It just has big ones on its maxilla and premaxilla. And then it has the this extending down here for the maxilla. But yeah, very narrow skull overall. It's a very interesting fish. These are deep sea fish. They live relatively far down in the ocean. You can find them farther up, but they're very interesting fish. They can also, like, they'll sit like this in the water column, kind of going vertically, so it's very interesting. Very weird fish, but very toothy. And yeah, they look very similar to barracudas. Another deep sea fish. Here we have the monkfish. Now, these are nowhere near as deep sea living as other anglerfish. However, they still live pretty far down. They get up to 3 feet long, so this is a very small individual with a 5-inch wide skull. You can see the little lures on top there used to attract fish for it to eat. And this one is also very toothy. You can see all those teeth in there. It even has teeth going right here on both sides right here. So that's what makes this really interesting, is those added teeth up there. But as you can see, it has the premaxilla here, and then the maxilla, and then the dentary has all the huge teeth. And you can also see some curved in there, kind of like snake fangs almost, on the maxilla. So it's very interesting. Well, on the premaxilla. The maxilla surprisingly doesn't have any teeth. But yeah, it's a very interesting skull. This is the side view. Eyes go somewhere in the middle of the hole there, that massive hole on top. There's the other side, and from the front, they're really flat anglerfish. They're relatively like flat. They're just like kind of like a pancake in terms of shape, other than they have the fins and the tail. But monkfish are very cool and very large anglerfish. They're one of the largest anglerfish, if not the largest. I don't remember for sure what the largest is, but anyway, they get up to 3 feet long, which is absolutely massive for an anglerfish. And they do live in relatively shallow water compared to other anglerfish. You can find them on like sandbanks and stuff, just like swimming around relatively deep though. Not just like right in the shallows, but they certainly live much higher up than other anglerfish. And yeah, it's a very unique skull. Very cool to get it. Then finally, our last one, which is a European species. This is the European conger eel. So it is my only eel skull. And this is a 7-inch skull. It is very interesting shaped. You can see, let me grab it like this. You can see the shape of it is very triangular. Then the operculum protects the gill arches again. So this one has a head that just kind of expands outward. Like you can see the back. It's honestly snake-like. Like snake skulls are shaped like this with that kind of triangularness. And then, yeah, the gill arches go back here. And you can see the neurocranium. That's where the brain would be through that little hole in there. And the vertebrae attach on there. But it's a very unique skull in terms of structure. Still has similar, like obviously the bones are still the same terms and everything for all of them. But it's a very interesting skull. Now the conger eel is one of the largest eels. They get up to 10 feet long. So this is a small individual. It's still several feet long though, probably at least 5. So still a very large fish, but it would only be weighing around like 10 to 15 pounds at that size, maybe less. You can see the teeth here. These teeth are actually peg-like rather than being super sharp. They're very interesting. Let me zoom in really quick. Very peg-like teeth. You can tell that there are a lot of them here. There are tons of them, but they're all very dull actually. They aren't meant for cutting so much, but they are meant for tearing. So they like grab something and shake their head and it rips it apart. And the top of the jaw, you can see on the top jaw, it has so many teeth, especially in the front, so it can crush things with that. And there's just tons and tons of teeth up there that look so freaky. All these larger teeth, and those ones are actually curved and pointed, whereas the ones on the bottom jaw and the top jaw on the edges, those ones are all more dull and flat tipped, whereas the ones on the top there in the front are all curved, sharp, and very pointy. And then there's kind of little pad on the roof of the mouth there, full of teeth. So it's very interesting to look at there. From the front of the skull, you can see it like this. So it's a very like the mouth kind of resembles a shark's in terms of shape, where it has that open gape there. It can basically open this thing even wider though, but you notice how from the front it looks kind of like it's a very shallow mouth, but from the side it actually opens up much wider. This thing can open up wide enough to probably latch around my arm, like my wrist or something. It is very long-mouthed, and it is an eel, like I said, so it has a very elongated body, elongated head. The eyes, hold on, let me zoom back out. The eyes would go in this area here, and then we have the nostrils are up here. And it got stuck to the blanket again. Okay. And then, yeah, we have the operculum here almost looks like it is a scapula from a mammal, which is very interesting. Yeah, eel skulls are very cool. The pike conger eel, which is a similar species to the European conger eel, They are very cool looking. Their mouth actually looks like a Spinosaurus because it has the kind of like curve and like very weirdly shaped jaws that look almost identical to a Spinosaurus, just slightly more elongated. That would be a very cool skull to obtain. They are very interesting. I've seen 3 of them for sale. I haven't been able to buy any of them, but that is certainly a on my wish list. Very cool skulls. They just, yeah, they resemble a Spinosaurus so much, and it's so interesting how like similar they look. Uh, their skulls, the ones I've seen for sale, are around 10 inches, so quite a bit larger than this conger eel. But they're both species of conger eel, and they're both very cool. But yeah, we got all these guys. And yeah, like I say, my favorite species of fish are catfish. So I don't know which one is my favorite skull out of the ones I own, out of all the fish I own. But I do like the Barracuda a lot. So this guy, and then also the African sharp-tooth catfish. Those are both probably my favorites. But anyway, guys, thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe, and I'll see you next time.